At this moment, we only have two parameters we need to pass to our repository. But it's not hard to imagine a use case where much more parameters have to be passed. Think about filtering on all properties, paging, sorting, and so on. There's a cool trick to avoid having to change your action and repository method signatures all the time. We can group these parameters together in one class. Let's add a new folder and let's name it Resource Parameters. And let's add a new class to it. We're working with the author's resource, so let's name it Author's Resource Parameters. Let's clean it up a bit. And let's add main category and search query properties to it. Then let's use this as the parameter type accepted by the getAuthors action on our controller. Let's import the required namespace. And there we go. We can now pass through this object to the getAuthors async method on the repository. Of course, we will now have to change the contract and the implementation. Let's start with the contract. Let's import the course library.api.resource parameters namespace for that. And there we go. On to the implementation. And let's again import the required namespace. Two things left. First, we check the input. So we check whether the inputted object is null, and if it is, we throw an exception. Up next is replacing the main category and search query values by the values from our object. And there we go. Let's have a look at that class again. The idea is that like this, we only have to add new properties to our author's resource parameters class when they are required. So we no longer have to change the various method signatures. Moreover, classes like this can sometimes be reused, or you could design a base class, which, for example, contains the search query parameter, as that could potentially be the same for all collection resources. So code like this improves reuse. Let's give this a try. Let's send that request that should result in a filtered, searched collection again. That's a bit odd. We get back a 415 unsupported media type. What could be going on? Let's switch back to our code. And let's switch to the authors controller. Remember that we talked about how the API controller attribute has its own set of rules for source parameter binding? One of those rules was that a complex type is automatically assumed to be coming from the request body. Author's resource parameters is a complex type, but it's not coming from the request body. It should be bound from the query string parameters. So let's apply the from query attribute here. And let's try that again. Let's send the same request. And there we go. It now works. One question remains though. Why exactly did we get back a 415 unsupported media type? Well, as you remember from when we looked into the different status codes, it means that the content of the request couldn't be deserialized because the API doesn't support that content type. In our case, we didn't even pass through a content type header, nor a request body for that matter. Seeing that because of the API controller attribute, the framework tried deserializing from the request body and couldn't find a no content type header, it gave us a 415 unsupported media type error. That's it for this demo. Time for the module summary.